The rain poured down on a quiet Thursday evening as I stood by the window, sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee. My name is Rachel Carter, a 37-year-old woman living in a quiet neighborhood in Portland. I'd always played by the rules: the daughter of a pastor, the valedictorian, the reliable friend, the loyal wife. But that night, something stirred in me. A need to challenge the very limits I'd set for myself. A knock came at the door. A subtle, uncertain tap, like someone wasn't sure if they should be here. And maybe I wasn't sure I should answer. But I did. I opened the door to see how far I could go. Standing there was Daniel Miller, 28, a close friend of my stepson Liam. Daniel had been over before for barbecues, birthdays, and late-night gaming sessions with the boys. He always had a calm, thoughtful air about him. Not loud, not aggressive, but observant. And that night, he looked like he had something to say, soaked from the rain, hoodie clinging to his lean frame. "Hey, I was just in the neighborhood," he said with a half-smile. "Saw your light on." I could have sent him away. I could have told him Liam wasn't home. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped aside and let him in. The warmth of the house quickly dried the tension between us, or so I thought. We sat in the kitchen as the rain tapped on the windows. The conversation was casual at first: how life had been for him since graduation, his new job at the marketing agency, how he missed hanging out with Liam. But there was a subtext in his tone, and the way his eyes lingered just a little too long when I looked away. I had never entertained inappropriate thoughts, but there was something about the way Daniel listened. Not just with his ears, but with his eyes, his presence. It made me feel seen. As the night stretched on, so did our conversation. Hours passed unnoticed. At one point, I laughed. A genuine, deep laugh. The kind I hadn't had in months. Maybe years. My marriage to Todd had become routine. We were more like business partners than lovers. And that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: alive. When Daniel reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear, it felt innocent. It wasn't. We both knew it. I pulled away, heart pounding. "I should probably get to bed," I said quickly, standing up and brushing my hands on my jeans.
He stood too.
"Of course. I didn't mean to stay this long." I nodded, walking him to the door, my fingers trembling. But as I reached for the handle, I hesitated. Something in my body refused to let go. I turned to him, met his eyes, and whispered, "Do you ever wonder what would happen if we just did something wild?" His gaze locked with mine, then slowly he smiled. All the time. There it was. That invisible line. I had just towed it. And I knew if I opened the door to this side of me, I might not be able to close it again. But I wanted to see. I wanted to test how far I could go. I leaned in first. Just a breath's distance between our lips, and he closed the gap. It was slow at first, unsure, but quickly deepened into something filled with years of restrained emotion and longing. We didn't go any further than that. Not that night. But it awakened something in me that would no longer be silent. Over the next week, I tried to act normal. Todd never noticed. He was busy with work and rarely asked about my days. But I thought about Daniel constantly.
And it wasn't just about him. It was about me.
About a woman who had been confined for years in expectation and routine. And suddenly, I had stepped outside that box. The next time I saw Daniel was at the grocery store. We didn't plan it. But the moment our eyes met across the aisle, the electricity returned. I walked over, pretending to browse cereal. He joined me. "So, have you figured out how far you're willing to go?" he asked, voice low. I swallowed hard. "I don't know, but I want to keep finding out." He slipped a note into my hand with an address and time. Saturday, 6 p.m. I wore something simple but bold: black jeans, a sleeveless maroon top. My hands shook as I drove to the address. It was an Airbnb tucked in a quiet neighborhood, just on the outskirts of town. As I stepped in, he met me with that same calm energy. No rush, no pressure, just space to breathe. We talked. We sat by the fire pit in the backyard. And when he kissed me again, it felt different, less forbidden, more deliberate. That night, I didn't go home until after midnight. Nothing happened that would violate any rules. But emotionally, I had crossed a threshold. Over the next month, I kept opening more doors. Small choices. Telling Todd I needed space. Taking a weekend off alone. Journaling my desires. Seeing Daniel not as a taboo, but as a mirror. He reflected back the woman I had buried beneath years of silence. The woman who danced barefoot in the rain, who spoke her mind, who said no when she meant it, and yes when she wanted it. One evening, as I sat in the bathtub, candles flickering around me, I reflected on the journey so far. I wasn't just testing limits for thrill. I was rediscovering my identity. I had built a life based on what others expected. But this messy, exhilarating experience was mine. And it wasn't about Daniel anymore. He had been the spark, but I had become the fire. When I finally sat down with Todd, I told him the truth. Not the whole truth, but enough. That I wasn't happy. That I needed time apart. That I had changed. He was quiet, almost relieved. We both knew it had been dying for years. The separation was mutual, civil. Daniel and I met again a few times. But eventually, even that chapter came to a close. He was a lesson, not a destination. Years later, I'm living in Santa Fe, running my own design studio. I hike on weekends, laugh louder than I used to, and write stories under the stars. I still think about that night, the knock at the door, the choice to open it. Not for love, not for rebellion, but for truth, for freedom. Because sometimes you don't open the door to let someone else in. Sometimes you open it to finally let yourself out.